time is a critical resource. We don't get more of it. So the longer I spend pursuing something that's not my real purpose, the shorter I have to pursue what is.
Welcome to the Economy Creators Podcast and Radio Show on KFRED Work Life Balance Radio. I'm your host, Mary Farias. This is where we spotlight real stories of entrepreneurs and creators building their U shaped economy around their unique interests, talents, and experiences. This podcast is part of a larger space called Economy Creators. I'm editing and publishing the Economy Creators Anthology, where I highlight and share the stories of 11 entrepreneurs and creators. Each one is in different phases of their entrepreneurial journey, and each has an incredible story to tell. You'll get to meet and learn more about each of these economy creators on this show. Plus, learn some tips from those who are making it happen. If you would like to be on the show, want to learn more about the anthology or any of the co authors, or simply have a question about being an economy creator, just reach out to me. I'm here to help you in any way that I can. And if you're an economy creator, I invite you to reach out and apply to be a guest. I love meeting and spotlighting economy creators. Today, I have a very good friend of mine on the Economy Creators podcast, actually, it's Dr. Toby Brooks, isn't it? He's a professor, he's a speaker, and he's an author, and he is a friend for a long, long time. Toby, welcome to Economy Creators.
No, it's great to be here. I really do appreciate the invite, and I love the platform and the work that you're doing. So it's an honor to be asked to be involved.
Oh, thank you, Toby. Well, Toby, do you want to tell everybody how we met?
Yeah. I was a wet behind the ears graduate assistant athletic trainer at the University of Arizona. They had 3 spots, one with football, one with volleyball, and one with gymnastics. And I said, I absolutely want football. I'd settle for volleyball. Lord, don't give me gymnastics. And that's what I got. And it was the best thing that ever happened for me personally and professionally when I look back at what I learned and who I met and relationships like this that continue to serve. So you were a gymnast, Shushanoving your way to stardom at the University of Arizona, and that's where our paths collided.
Shushanoving my way. I love that. I like how you can make a person's name a verb. I think that's so good. So, Toby, I love that you you didn't want gymnastics at all. You don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Why not?
Well, honestly, I mean, football in athletic training circles is kind of the ego sport. Like it's the higher profile, the gear you get is better, the travel is, all charter flights and all that kind of stuff. And I never really was involved with gymnastics. I'd watched, I'm a huge Olympics geek and had watched every 4 years. I always joke that you walk inside a gymnastics training facility and the word death or severe injury is plastered right on the side of every piece of equipment in the facility. So it was a little terrifying watching you all tumble and twist and vault. But man, just the relationships and from the coaching staff to the equipment managers to all points in between, just an incredible family that Bill had built there. And I was blessed to get to be a part of it.
Me too. Me too. I met Bill when I was 13 years old at a gymnastics camp, and he was coaching me. And I said, I have to be on the University of Arizona gymnastics team. That was my first big goal. And it was because of him. It really was. And you're right. It's all about relationships, isn't it?
No, it was a season of transition. Bill had just been elevated to the head coach, and John had just come in. So it was a great time for me to be involved, and it was really a real blessing to see Bill kind of get to come into his own as the head coach.
Yeah, that's fun. And the other thing is too, is kind of like what you mentioned, you didn't want gymnastics, but you looking back, you thought, "Oh, this is something that I really needed in my life." And Steve Jobs has put it, and I always quote him. He says, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backward." So what are some of the things besides the relationships that you learned as that surprise you're in gymnastics type of type of situation?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm in a sports psychology class right now this summer semester, and there are things that, in retrospect, I learned in practice that I'm learning about now as a professor slash student. And just the drive, the yeah, there's perfection. There's a dark side to the mentality of a highly competitive gymnast. I always said you're an exception to the rule. You had a very healthy relationship with gymnastics all throughout, and not all your teammates could say that. And partially that was you, and partially that was the environment within which you trained. Not all of your teammates had that experience. But that said, it it was definitely unique for me to see young women who had trained in that sport since they were 3 or 4 years old, really in the twilight of their career. No one goes to college gymnastics because they're planning to go pro as a gymnast. It's the twilight. It's almost like a retirement tour. And hopefully you can go out on a high note and, you know, tie some loose ends on a career. But seeing athletes who were Olympic hopefuls at one time kind of come to terms with what that identity piece meant for them, seeing others who had walked on, who were just pleased to be a part of the family, like, that was really instructive for me to see how the athletes that I worked with navigated going in knowing that this was it. Most other D1 major, at University of Arizona, a lot of athletes are going there with, even if they don't expressly say it, like, they're hoping that they get a chance to play at the next level. That's not the gymnast's story. She's hoping she can finish while she can still walk, that she's still happy and has a good relationship. And so just really learned a lot about the grace and about the negotiation that occurs as you kind of leave behind something that's been central to who you are for so long, and then the now what.
Now what? That's the question, isn't it? The now what? Which kind of leads me into your podcast, right? Becoming Undone, because I was on your podcast earlier, well, last year, and number 111, my favorite number. And I think what you explore is something really important. It's the identity piece, isn't it? And how we as athletes or people in sports or people in high level um well, circumstances need to understand that we're never finished, huh?
Yeah, that coming apart and feeling like we're being ripped to pieces, something that's central to who I am is suddenly gone, and the now what comes there. And the play on words is, well, you realize that you've got a purpose left unfulfilled. You're undone, you're unfinished. And so going from that kind of place of wreckage or shattering to a place of purpose is really a beautiful thing. And it's wonderful how what I endured or what I experienced in that previous version of my life has uniquely prepared me for what's next.
Yeah, and you have had some incredible guests on your show. So who are some of the people that just blew you away when you're interviewing them?
Well, Mary Reese, for one, was absolutely phenomenal. Farias.
Thank you.
Um, I've had folks from all different walks of life. Honestly, my interview with my own kids were really instructive. That was really cool to kind of sit down across a table in a contrived relationship and have them answer questions as though I was not dad, but as a podcast host. That was really beautiful. I had Charles Austin, who was the Olympic gold medalist in the 96 Summer Olympics in the high jump. Um, he won the event, I believe he set the US record at the meet, but just missed out on the world record. And he shared with me how he was on the podium, the US national anthem's playing, they're raising the flag, and he's angry. And I thought, wow, like we can, in our own minds, ruin the most magical of situations. And I won't say ruin, that's probably an uncharitable way to frame it. But he says, I couldn't enjoy what I had done because all I was focused on was what I hadn't. And I thought, if an Olympic gold medalist can be dissatisfied with his performance, what hope do the rest of us have? So that was really, really inspiring instructive. I've had Grammy award winning artists, U.S. Navy SEALs, former pro athletes. So, what I discovered, I mean, I initially came at this from the standpoint of athlete, 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 but that transition out of one season into another is a human thing. It's not unique to an athlete. It's certainly part of the athlete's experience, and oftentimes earlier than other walks of life because we age out, we injure out, we otherwise have to hang it up. Whereas an entrepreneur, market might dictate that, but they're not necessarily time critical. But it's still the same kind of mental process to transition and kind of sort through the wreckage of a dream unfulfilled or, very few people end their competitive athletic career feeling like, and I think you're an exception to this, where you really felt like you got every ounce of your athleticism out. You were able to express it. Injury kind of came in at the periphery, but it wasn't like you had a massive surgery to overcome. That's not the typical athlete story. There's always the what could have beens, if this, then that. And that's a hard thing to navigate for an athlete, but that's no different from a military veteran who has left a career that they've known their entire adult life, or an artist that, you know, you were getting roles as Hollywood lead and now all of a sudden you're being cast as the mom. I mean, that's a transition that people have to make. And it's human. It's not an athlete thing.
Yeah, it's it I saw it in my teammates so much that, their identity, like you said, when they started the sport when they were 3 years old, and they were a gymnast forever and ever and ever until all of a sudden at the ripe old age of 22, you're done, and the question of now what is huge, and I have to say that now what almost didn't enter my world, Toby, until I was, after 37 years in the sport. And when COVID hit and we decided that we were going to close the gym, and instead of starting all over again with the gym, start all over again with a different type of work, which isn't really a different type of work. It's just a spinoff. But I had to really undo the self-image of gymnast because, like you had mentioned, I was
Mm.
decent, I was a decent gymnast, and so my whole identity was wrapped up in gymnastics, and so I always had this I'm successful in gymnastics. I always had the in gymnastics at the end of that, right? I was a great student because I needed to be for gymnastics. I was a good leader because I needed to be inside in the gym for my kids and for my coaches, right? And, I had to really undo that self-image of in the gym or as a gymnast and move it into just, "I am successful, period," right?
Yeah. I would say you're far too modest, but I do recognize that you transitioned out of competitive gymnastics as an athlete to being a coach. So that identity piece was almost it was a bridge. A lot of folks I've heard they went into coaching and it wasn't so much a conscious choice. It was just, well, what I do with this identity I've spent my entire life cultivating. I guess I just have to be a coach. Like that's the next natural step. And sometimes it's almost like a weaning process to transition you from that to what's next.
Are the people that you, um, interview on your podcast, have they gone through that transition to the next stage of life, or are they still navigating it? What are you finding?
Yeah, it's a great question because to really be practical and authentic, like those are the stories in the midst of that would really be helpful for people. I recognize that. But the problem is nobody wants to hear the story of someone that's mired in their own undoing. Like in the unraveling, that's not a compelling narrative. It's after I've emerged from the unraveling with a new purpose and now I'm successful that becomes inspiring. And so with the book, what I'm trying to do is kind of tell the story with a little bit more context and depth so that you can really see like this person that you think is an overnight success, this was 5, sometimes 10, sometimes 20 years in the making, and they've done extensive personal work to be an overnight success. So by definition, they're really not. Like, they're a multi-decade success. So, yeah, I think if we really wanna be authentic, we wanna see people's stories, warts and all, but it's not a compelling story to hear because you don't know, like, well, maybe you just made bad choices and now you're reaping the consequences of a life that you shouldn't have. People need to see the success on the other side of it for it to be something they wanna hear.
Yeah, well, and when you're going through it, you don't know how it's gonna end, right? You don't know, well, you might have a goal in the end, but when you're in the middle of it, it just hurts and it's just hard and you probably don't seek out to be on a podcast to tell everybody about it. Here,
Yes,
write this story
100%.
about my pain right now, right? So, um, you just kind of under the table mentioned the book, Toby. So what are you working on?
Yeah, so just finished the draft, it's off to the editors, it's becoming undone, same title as the book. It started in 2020 as a memoir. Um, Kinda like we were talking about, I was really going through kind of a dark time, and it was if I would have shared with you what I was writing in 2020, you probably wouldn't have wanna read it, and if you had, you'd been concerned for me because it was just part of the process that I needed to go through. I needed to sort through just my own emotions associated with a life that didn't necessarily go according to plan, and so just kept chipping away at it. There were times when I had to step aside and not work on it for a while because it was really stirring up some things that were tough to deal with. But then in the interim, started the show, and now I've got not just my own story. It's not a memoir so much as lessons learned from 100 plus interviews of high achievers. And then beyond that, this coaching framework that came about where we're going to uncover aspects of our goals. I mean, undone actually stands for something. We're defining, we're overcoming, navigating, and then ultimately executing. So those stages of the coaching framework that I built became chapters of their own. And then I sprinkled stories of guests along the way that really kind of illustrated those aspects of the journey. So it was a therapeutic process for me. It's much more positive now than it was back in 2020. I mean, we were all kind of dealing with that situation in our own way. I think it's better because of it. There are some chapters I wrote that very few, if anybody, will ever get to read, but that was part of the process. And I think what I learned was the perfectionist in me always felt like, oh well, that's chapter one. It needs to be perfect. Like, no, like chapter 1 back in 2020 looks dramatically different than 2026, and it took 7 or 8 different shapes to get there, and that's a good thing, right? When you're training a new skill, you're never gonna just nail it the first time, and I love the analogy of gymnastics. We got foam pits, and we've got tumble tracks, and we've got all these apparati that are going to protect you from the imminent failure that's gonna happen when you're learning that skill. We don't give ourselves that same grace. Like, we expect it to just come right out of the box and be perfect. And so that was something that I had to kind of, strip away and just be okay with. This is a work in progress. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's as good as I can get it at this point, and we'll see how we do.
There's always the option for another edition at some point, Toby, too. So you don't have to be perfect right at the
Yeah,
beginning.
right, right.
But you're right about gymnastics, and I think that's in a sport steeped with perfection, that's where I learned how to fail forward. Yeah. I mean, you can attest to this. When you would see us learning a new skill, we fell a lot.
Yeah. But I love the lesson. Like, it's instructive because you knew you were gonna fall a lot. You expected it. Like, if you would have nailed it right out of the box, you and Bill and everyone in the gym probably would have been surprised. Like, the expectation is this is going if it was easy, everybody'd do it, right? But it's
Yeah.
hard. And hard things require you to learn and acquire skills and abilities you don't have yet. And by golly, that's a message we can all wrap our arms around.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just watch a little kid learn how to walk. They just keep getting up.
Yeah. Yep.
We all did it. Yeah. So Toby, you didn't start off as a PhD, so you started off as a wet behind the ears athletic trainer for a gymnastics team. So
Mhm.
what has happened since back in the day in the early 2000s when you and I met to 2026? A lot has happened in your life. So do you want to give us a little bit of an insight into what you've been doing this whole time?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's illustrative of what I've been talking about. There was kind of this tension, this back and forth. I loved being a clinician, but that life is hard. It doesn't pay particularly well. The hours are long. And as I became a dad and as I became a husband, I was a husband already, but as I continued to grow in my responsibilities elsewhere, it became harder and harder for me to justify the expense that I was paying. So I worked in Division I football for a while, stint in the NFL, some USA baseball stuff, but ultimately decided to kind of pivot and lean on my terminal degree, and I've been in higher ed for the bulk of that time. Um, Kind of bounced around a few different schools, Texas Tech, kind of most prominently. I was there for 15 years, and in the past 2 years came to Baylor, where I'm now an administrator, and also help young, pre- predominantly younger professors and faculty improve their teaching. So I still teach. I work with our Masters of Athletic Training students. I'm working on my sixth degree right now in exercise physiology, and have already signed up for a seventh. So I'm a lifelong learner.
Ah,
I really think that if faculty aren't actively pursuing classes of their own, that says a lot about their belief in what they're peddling. Like, if I really believe that college is a place where I can upskill and gain new knowledge, then why am I not partaking of it as a student? It teaches me a lot.
yeah, you're leading by example, aren't you?
Trying to, yeah.
Taking care of the physical aspect of the athlete is one thing, but I think what you have found throughout your career, especially in the gymnastics world, is that there's a whole other piece of the athlete that's at play. So what have you found in your teaching and kind of uncovering that for your students?
Yeah. Well, I'll credit you. You were there when my podcast inauspiciously was born. I I was in the midst of remote learning. I had a behavioral health class that was full of second year AT students who were losing out on their clinical experiences. They were supposed to be getting experience leading to their certification, and COVID had shut all that down. And I knew that they were struggling themselves with their loss, and they were bored to death with me lecturing on Zoom. So I convened this panel, and you were among that group. And I thought it would be kinda cool just to hear from some past, former athletes who've retired and kinda talk us through that transition out, and I was blown away at the conversations. Mike Meyer, in particular, talked about his last game as a professional baseball player and how he drove 15 hours back to Tucson in stone silence, just thinking about this game I've loved, I poured everything into, I had aspirations of being a Major League Baseball player, and it's over. And now what?
Yeah.
And I think what that conversation, all of you kind of talked about it in your own ways, but what that conversation left me with was we as athletic trainers, sports medicine professionals, do a pretty good job of taking care of broken bones and sprains and strains and those kinds of things. And we do a not as good job at the psychological. But in particular, when you graduate or you're out of eligibility and you're not on my roster anymore, I've just kind of said, I'm done. Like I'm worried about the athletes who are on the roster. I don't have the time, the resources, or the energy to care for those who are in many ways more vulnerable than they've ever been. Michael Phelps produced a documentary during COVID called Weight of Gold, where he talks about kind of the post Olympic blues and how rates of suicide are markedly higher among Olympians post their Olympic Games. This is something we've seen not just in college or Olympic, I mean, even high school athletes who are grieving the loss of something like this. And in that moment, they've got less support than they've ever had. And so we have to do better. And that's really where this work has come from. And I haven't really gotten into the advocacy side of things, but certainly I would love to kind of step in and be involved in some of the things that help support athletes or others who are in this sort of transitional season.
Yeah, you're right. When you say that they have less support than ever, you're right. Because if you think about it, they no longer are going to school. They're no longer going into the gym or on the field or whatever. They don't have their coaches, coaching staff. They don't have the athletic trainers. They don't have the academic advisors. They don't have any of that. All of a sudden, it's like a band-aid is ripped off. And they're just left up to their own devices and a whole lot of time on their hands, right? Because all of a sudden, we're not training for
Mhm.
20 plus hours anymore each week. And now what? Now what? And when you were talking about Mike,
Yeah.
and he's someone that I've known for just as long as I've known Toby, 30, almost 30 years. Um, the when you were telling a story just now, I had so many goosebumps because I remember him telling that story on that panel, and it was heart-wrenching, and it was really informative to hear everybody's side, because here's the other thing, Toby, is that, no, we don't have that outside support, but also we didn't really talk to each other about what we were going through either, because a handful of those people on the panel that you mentioned we're all contemporaries, and we were all in the same athletic department at the same time, going through the same thing at the same time, and we had no idea that we all were going through that same thing. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah. Mhm. There's another piece of this is the stigma associated. Like athletes are cultivated at an early age to be impenetrable, to be strong, to be tough. Like you're going to be iron willed in your persistence to get through this thing. And what that breeds is even if I'm dealing with these emotions, I can't talk about it because I'm going to almost give away the secret that's inside of me. But when you do that, and the teammate beside you is doing that, and the teammate beside her is doing that, you're all thinking that it's just you when in fact it's all of you. And the stigma keeps people from talking about it. And the keeping from talking about it leads you to think that somehow it's a deficiency unique to you. If we can normalize it and say, this is hard, this is going to be most likely a really difficult transition, but there is hope and there's opportunity, and what's behind you is actually equipped you better for what's ahead of you. Now we're at a place where we can really step in and help somebody. But it's that stigma and it's that hesitancy to talk about it that leads people to to self-isolate.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what are your thoughts in your research and how you've, uncovered these ideas and these stories from people? How do you imagine being that bridge between it's over and what's new?
Yeah, great question. I think part of it is just an awareness piece, and that's part of what I love doing is telling other people's stories. If I'm telling stories about people who have overcome, I'm helping to normalize that, they might not have said anything in that moment, but they're giving you a peek behind the curtain to see they were racked with fear and doubt and uncertainty. And just knowing that is liberating in a lot of ways. It gives me agency. I'm left feeling like it's not just me. I'm not deficient. I'm not broken. I'm human. And in that humanity, I can encounter pain without it ending me. And I can navigate a lonely season with an understanding that I'll be better. I'll be formed through the process. One of my favorite quotes says, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." And knowing that it's going to be hard, but it needs to be hard. And I can go through, I can do hard things and I'll be stronger for it. And not only that, I'm better equipped to help the generation behind me. If we as Gen Xers are willing to talk about what boomers weren't, then Gen Zers are going to be better equipped and at least informed on the process in a way that we never were. And I'm being a little liberal there and including myself in your generation, but I'm a little older.
Not much. So Toby, it really is reflective of what you did for me as an athletic trainer because my sophomore and junior years, it was injury after injury, right? Freshman and senior years were great. Sophomore and junior years, it's just seemed like the injuries piled on top of each other. And here's what it feels like as an athlete in Division 1 when you get an injury. Something happens, you go through the rigmarole, get the X-rays, get the MRI, get whatever scan you need, and go to the doctor, and he tells you this is what you need to do. And all of a sudden, you're out of the lineup. Your coaches are like, okay, you're over there on the sidelines. Go talk to Toby. Go talk to Toby. See what you have to do today. Right. And so you're kind of isolated from the team already. And I was on a great team. They were great, but they also had to focus on what's going on. And so now that I was out of the lineup, I was in your lineup and I had to really spend a lot of time with you, which was great because I got to know you really well. But the other thing is that I think you're so well equipped to take what you did for athletes like me in that interim when we were injured and we were kind of cast aside. Well, come back to us when you're better, right? And you picked up those pieces and you made us feel like we still mattered. And you made us feel, and at least me for sure, that I'm on your side, I'm on your team. I want to get you back into the lineup as soon as I can. And I felt that from you. And thank you, first of all, because I don't think everybody had that. And the other thing is that it's a very similar to the transition of when the sport is over. Because when you're in the middle of a season, if I can't redshirt, I have to get better faster, or I have to, I feel like I'm isolated from my team. And so what you did was you made it you just made it palatable and you made it like I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that you're well equipped because of those transitions between injured and non-injured, that you can navigate the end of a sport to what's next. You're a natural bridge for that. And I think you can help a lot of people become that natural bridge also.
Well, thank you, Mary. I can't tell you how much that means to hear you say that. I will also say, you were dealing, like I said, you never had a major, it wasn't like you landed and broke a leg. It wasn't a torn ACL. You were dealing with things, and I remember you being on the treatment table, if not in tears, near tears. And you're here, so this is not a HIPAA violation. If I go too far, you let me know. But you're dealing with a knee injury, and we were looking for this is always what we're looking for, a structural pathology, and we couldn't find it with you. And so at that point, it's like it's either neurological locally in your knee, or it's a pain perception thing in your head. And for a gymnast to be told that I have this debilitating knee pain, I can't do what I'm here to do, and it's all in my head, that was like piling on. I think it would have been easier had you torn your ACL and we knew that you were undergoing recovery. It was almost like your toughness and your character was being called into question in that moment. And my heart broke for you because I know that you're tough. I know you and all of your teammates were some of the toughest athletes I ever worked with, but you in particular stood out. And to know that you couldn't go, that's a signal. Like you're not milking this. You're not trying to get out of things. I always said that one of the biggest challenges working with gymnasts is you almost have to chain them to the fence to keep them out of the gym. Like they're not trying to get out of stuff. They're trying to get back too soon to stuff. And so your particular injury, I think it weighed heavy on you because you're thinking like, my teammates are counting on me, but I didn't tear my ACL. Like I just have this thing. Like this is I'm opting to not compete. And I see parallels in other like you didn't get the job or you aren't given an opportunity to get a promotion. Like all we can control is all we can control. But if your life didn't just massively blow up on a macroscopic scale, I think it's natural for us to kind of doubt and wonder within ourselves, like, is this really as bad as it seems like? And so I want to tell you to your face, like, I love you and I'm thankful for you and seeing you in that condition on that table, questioning whether or not you could compete on that leg, being told that there was no structural pathology, it had to be demoralizing and it had to weigh heavily on you.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. Ah, you're making me misty-eyed. But yes, it was really you're right. It probably would have been easier to have something that you could put a cast on or have a surgery and fix and this is the path forward. This is how you fix this and you'll be back in 6 months or whatever it is. But it was neurological and it was ugh, that was the worst thing ever to have that nerve frozen, by the way. Ugh. But, I still remember what it felt like, and yes, I was bawling at that point, you know that. But, yeah, I mean, to be an athlete, to have I poured everything into the sport, I really did, and most of most of us at that point do. And that is because you think about the perception of your coaches and your teammates, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, she's hurt again," or what are you gonna do?"
Mm.
I didn't wanna be that
Yeah.
girl, you know? I didn't wanna be that teammate that people just can't count on at all, and so I was so grateful for you because you never thought it was in my head. You always knew that there was something, and I have to say that I don't think everyone out there in your position would have done the same. It's a testament to your
Now you're
character.
making me misty-eyed.
That's what happens when we spend, 25 years knowing each other
Yeah.
or more.
Right.
It's
Right, right.
been a while.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Toby, tell us about your podcast because I keep seeing posts from you that it's so high up in the rankings, and that's wonderful. So tell us about Becoming Undone and tell us about what your goal is for it.
Yeah, it's been such a wild ride, and it's been instructive because I started New Year's Day, 2022. I had 10 episodes in the bag ready to go and wanted to kinda get a big push, and I was just like we always do with anything new, and it's called the hype cycle, if you're familiar with it, where we start out and our energy is high and we're motivated and we're ready to just grab the world by the horns, and I've got this new podcast and everyone's gonna listen to it, and the fact that I had 10 episodes really helped, and that kind of boosted, and then it was this precipitous drop, like, over time, and my goal, I'm so bad at judging time. I said, "I can produce 3 episodes a week." I was gonna do 2 guest interviews and a short form every week, and I was gonna have 100 episodes in the bank by the end of the year. Ridiculous. I had a full-time job. Like, I did not have the time. It took me, like, 10 hours per episode initially to do all the editing and everything else, and I just did not have 25 hours a week for this podcast. So, it started to become a little less frequent and in the hype cycle as our expectations continue to not match our outcomes, we enter what's called the trough of disillusionment, or the valley of despair, as some have called it. And the question for anyone that's trying to accomplish something is, can you navigate through however long that's going to be? It could be 2 months, it could be 2 years, it could be 20 years. We don't know. Think about how Amazon used to just sell textbooks. Like, they lost money every year. Like, they're in that trough of disillusionment, but they stuck it out. Jeff Bezos had a plan. So 6 months in, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. Uh, I just kind of lost the enthusiasm. I loved telling the stories, but it felt like I was talking into an empty room. And thankfully, I kept going. They weren't as regular as they were. There certainly wasn't 3 a week, but I kept chipping away, kept chipping away, kept chipping away. And just on a whim, I thought, the podcasts that are doing the best, these true crime documentaries, I had watched or listened to a show called Waiting for Impact with former guest Dave Holmes, who was a former MTV VJ. And what I loved about that format was he was telling a story, and you constantly felt like the cliffhanger, right? Like, what I heard in that episode, I've got to hear the rest of the story in the next episode. And I'm like, my show doesn't do that. It's just a one snippet. I interview Mary and we talk about Mary, and next episode we talk about somebody else. So I decided to do a docuseries on a guy by the name of Larry Johnson, grandmama from the 90s. He played for the Charlotte Hornets. And I just started doing this multi-part documentary. The first guest was a guy who was the PR manager for the Charlotte Hornets. And so I start telling these stories, and I don't know Larry, and I don't know his agent. And as it turned out, the show led to conversations with each of those people, culminating with the man himself. And I thought, wow, this is cool. Like, 9 episodes, a deep dive. I got to tell some stories about myself, like why even to this day, I still wear teal, um, purple and teal for that matter. And so that kind of planted the seed. I love telling stories. I love telling other people's stories. But where it really started to generate some momentum were these docuseries. So the next one I did was on Coach Dick Tomey, who was the head football coach at Arizona while both of us were there. I really wanted to do a deep dive on his leadership because I really felt like he built a culture in a way unlike any other coach. I will say Bill also is in that same vein, but I didn't feel like I could do a deep dive. Like, he didn't have the breadth and the recognition that a Dick Tomey did, who was, he's coaching a roster of 110 athletes every year for 15 years. I knew that there were just lots more stories. So I did that, and that's when it really picked up. I ended up interviewing um, 4-time Super Bowl winner Jesse Sapolu, who played for him in Hawaii, Coach Brent Brennan, who's with the team now, head coach, several others who were, either played for him or had been a coach. And so from there, it just kind of took off because these were shareable stories. I was telling stories of well-known people who were talking about the guy that influenced them more than maybe any other, maybe their parents. So from there, we've just continued to grow, routinely in the top 10 in education and self-improvement. I kind of flirt with, I'm in and out of the top 200 on Apple. But it's been a wild ride. And like I said, like 6 months in, I was ready to just stop, but I stuck it out, and it really taught me a valuable lesson about perseverance and navigating that trough of despair.
Yeah. Well, in personal development, of course, Napoleon Hill talks about persistence and being 3 feet
Mhm.
from gold and giving up just because the well seems to dry up. But really, you just have to make a right turn, and the well is bigger than you ever imagined.
Yep, that's well said.
What is the most exciting thing that you're working on or doing for the rest of this year? What are you excited about in your economy?
Yeah, the book is a long time coming. I mean, I shared the story. When you work on a project like that, you know better than I do because you've actually given birth. You are a mom, but a formative project like that, it takes so many different shapes, and to see that actually come to life, and I'm looking forward to holding that copy in my hand for the first time. It's just been computer screens all along. So I am looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to what I hope that will mean for my speaking opportunities to have something like that lends credibility to the speaking and the keynotes that you want to do. So I really do hope to lean in more heavily. These are and it's not coming from a place of ego or wanting to be on a stage. It's because these are lessons that I wish I would have learned earlier in life. These are things that I would love to share or imbue into someone else. And I have to think if I can get that opportunity to serve people in that way, then I want to serve them as best I can. So the book kind of hopefully will create some opportunities to do that. Beyond that, I've got a couple of other projects that I'm chipping away at, some articles for publication that I'm working on for the day job. And then I'm going to finish up this current uh, master's degree that I'm working on now and hopefully start on the next one. I just got notice that I got accepted into the next one at the University of Florida, and I'll probably start that in the fall.
Ah, lifelong learner. That's you. That's you. Well, that's wonderful, Toby. I think that that your book is going to be so informative and so people are going to receive it very well because there's a reason why your podcast is doing so well. And here's what it is. There's nothing about you that's ego driven in ever that I've ever seen or heard or noticed about you in all the years that I've met you. You've always been service oriented. You've always put relationships and people first. And that's how you succeed. People want to be around you because of who you are.
Oh, I appreciate that. I will say, I Becoming Undone is the first in my mind, and I've got kind of the outline. There's really 3 books in this series. Becoming Undone is the first, Living Undone is the second, and Serving Undone is the last. And Living Undone, I haven't decided where your story is gonna go because you really fit in both of those, living and serving, but I've got 16 guests whose story made it into this book, but that's really not your story. I mean, I know you've overcome adversity, but your your zone of genius is living and serving in a way that I think many people don't. So I kind of saved your story. You'll be in one of the next, most likely, I think Living Undone is kind of where your story deserves to be, but you'll be in there. It wasn't an omission because it wasn't a worthy story to tell. I just knew that it aligned better with what was coming up.
Ooh, I'm excited. Well, that means there are more books, and I think that that's spectacular. You know me, I love books. That's awesome. So, Toby, where can people reach you and learn more about you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. The show is Becoming Undone. You can find it on all the major platforms. The website where you can do a deeper dive on the guests is undonepodcast.com. And then my personal is tobybrooksphd.com. And all my stuff is there.
Wonderful. And I always ask my guests this. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to impart on the audience?
Hmm. I think the lesson I learned from just staying the course through that dip has been something that's really served me well. And so there's a fine line between iron-willed persistence and a complete lack of self-awareness. Like no amount of my pouring my heart and soul and energy into basketball was going to result in me being in the NBA. That's a lack of self awareness. So I love the idea that people persist and, the 3 feet from the gold. What if you're, 3 years from the gold? Or, you really have to trust the data, but I always say data informed, not data decided. If I would have trusted the data, I would have quit my podcast before I reached success. But if I've got mountains of data telling me I need to quit, then maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree. I'm doing the wrong thing. And that's when a pivot is necessary. So it's a fine line. I don't want to discourage anyone, but at the same time, it's important to use data as we pursue our dreams.
Well, and I like that, and I also think that that data-driven concept can also tell us when to be open to accepting a new possibility or a new opportunity, and it might not be that this is what your your hole is to fit into, that it actually is over here and look how big it is. Right?
Mhm.
So when we have those blinders, we can't see the better opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you did kind of pivot.
Yeah. I think of your story. I mean, I did, but I think about you, like your gym was doing well. You were serving young athletes, and I know it broke your heart to have to close the doors on that chapter of your life, if for no other reason than those individual athletes. But at the same time, you felt that undone in your soul that I can take what I'm doing here and scale it and serve more people in ways that I'm not able to do it here. And time is a critical resource. We don't get more of it. So the longer I spend pursuing something that's not my real purpose, the shorter I have to pursue what is.
That's so true. That's so true. Ah, thank you, Toby. I truly, truly appreciate you. I appreciate the time you spent with us today and, of course, our friendship. So thank you.
Same. Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you for listening. Are you an economy creator? Join me for my free Economy Creators Workshop the first week of every month. And if you're interested in being on the Economy Creators podcast and radio show here on KFred Lifestyle Optimization Radio, please reach out and apply. I can't wait to meet you.